the obligatory protest songs, but the techniques of wage negotiations.
First, you have to have good strategies. How are we going to advance our demands? How are we going to defeat the other side?
In Korea, as in Australia, the government is trying to limit salary increases. Even in Kwon's mock negotiations, it's easy for business to oblige.
국가적으로 노태우 형님께서 막 그러는데 내가 어떻게 뭐 백도 있고 백도 없는데 어떻게 하겠는가.
연결시키라는 게 아니라 자기가 현재 생활하는 입장의 전체적인 것도 고려하고 그리고 노동자의 생활 조건을 고려를 해야지.
그게 150원이면 충분히 빌려다 볼 수 있어요.
그러면은 생산성이 향상이 안 된 게 노동자한테 그 문제가 있는 겁니까?
Each spring in Korea, each factory individually negotiates new pay and working conditions. And each spring there are protests. At least Kwon's graduates will have new songs. Kwon is a true believer and has suffered for her beliefs. It's with her songs that Koreans are finding the voice of protest.
I tell you that no matter how much they try to oppress the workers by enlisting the help of the government, the workers' movement will continue. We're going to force this country to change.
With or without Kwon, the change is happening. The rich and individual culture of this country is disappearing. 3,000 years ago, some scholars claim, Korea exported civilization to Japan. It has got back a model for economic growth that sees girls like Park Mi-ok working in almost Dickensian conditions. Park was 17 when she came to Seoul to earn money to support her parents and family back in the village.
When I first came to Seoul, I was so lonely I cried a lot. They called me crybaby. Everybody here cries a lot in the beginning, but we have to work for a happier life.
Park shares a government-subsidised dormitory with other factory girls. It's cramped, but she's happy enough. She and other factory workers now get $12 a day. It used to be $3. Korea, like the other mini-dragons, built its prosperity on girls like Park. The West sent designs, back came goods, made well and at a fraction of the cost. Park works for Young Sook at the sort of garment factory that put Made in Korea tags on our backs and backsides. But the sort of factory that is now under threat because of higher wages and a slowly changing work ethic that is foreign to people like No.
I don't have time for a personal life, but I don't feel any stress. God gave me this job and I work with my employees.
The factory is home to its workers 11 hours a day, 6 days per week. Young Sook's wife prepares breakfast for workers, then lunch and a meal at 7:30, the end of the working day. And No, remembering the days before he was able to afford the factory, really does treat staff like a family.
The first time I handed out paychecks, I was overwhelmed with emotion. My role changed from receiver to giver of paychecks. In honor of the event, I went to the best public bathhouse to clean myself, and I had my hair cut and my face shaved. Since then, for the past 10 years, I've never once missed this ritual.
But for No, those pay packets are getting harder to fill. Factories like his were prosperous when Made in Korea meant something was poor quality but cheap. Now Korean workers are more skilled, more worldly and demanding more money. Products can't be made as cheaply anymore. And now Korea is competing with made in Indonesia, made in Thailand, and made in China. The first stage of Korea's development is over. The heady, halcyon days of double-digit growth. Korea has been using its hands. Now it must use its head. It's Sunday at Kyungbok Palace. Once the home of Korea's kings, now a rare relic of a civilization and culture that's being furiously obliterated. Hakyong Nam comes here often with his family. The palace and the reminders of 5,000 years of tradition give a perspective to the work he does as one of the architects of Korea's industrial growth. Hakyong Nam is section chief in Korea's Economic Planning Board. It is he who will ultimately decide the future of No's factory and Park's job, and it will be the past that will help guide him.
When we come here, it's important that we think about our ancestors' Confucianism. Confucianist belief means putting the benefit of the country above yourself. We lost a lot of this when we changed our focus to material wealth.
It's a problem for Hakyong Nam. The traditions he honours are frequently in conflict with the realities of modern-day Korea and at odds with the events that set the country on its new path. On June the 25th, 1950, communist forces from the north invaded the south. 3 years of fierce fighting followed. As 16 countries, including Australia, contributed troops to the US-led United Nations force, South Korea was given the dubious honour of being the front line against communism. 1 million Koreans were to die. Many millions were displaced. The country would be devastated. China, the North's backer, would retreat into 20 years of xenophobia. North Korea into 40 years of despotic rule and deprivation. And the war would shape too the lives of people like Hakyong Nam.
My father died in the Korean War, and I was brought up by my mother. She was only in her 20s at the time, but she sacrificed her whole life to raise me, her only son. Our only hope then was to have 3 meals a day.
When it was over, nothing had been achieved. No side had won, no side lost. No surrender, nothing. Just a truce, and a truce line drawn arbitrarily through a country, and opposing soldiers agreeing to stay their side of it.
Do you know what ceasefire means? It's when two sides in a war stop fighting and rest for a while. So even now, we are still in a state of war.
At the 38th parallel, troops of the North still eyeball UN forces. Less venomously these days, but with as much suspicion and schoolboy one-upmanship.
The North Korean flag stands slightly higher than the United Nations, however we have a wider tip. The North Korean flag is slightly longer than ours, however ours is wider. North Koreans have a 3-tier base, whereas we have a 2-tier. However, our 2-tier base is equal in height to their 3.
The border has come to separate more than just communist and capitalist, cooperative and shaibol. It has come to symbolize the dark mistrust North and South have for one another. The 38th parallel has been Asia's Berlin Wall. People like Hakyong Nam grew up with its menace, but like West Germans, got blood money for having the honour of confronting communism. It was called foreign aid, an investment.
우리 사회가 있는 위치는 개발.
Right now, we're better off than the other developing countries who still haven't solved their basic eating and shelter problems.
더 있다고 생각합니다.
But I still feel that Korea has another wall to climb before it's an advanced country.
도약을 하기 위해서는
And to climb that wall, we have to sacrifice and unite as a country.
것이 중요하다고 믿습니다.
강의한 거 있잖아. 그거를 지금 현정택 과장이 그 아메리칸 챔버 오브 커머스에 가서 지금 강의를 하게 돼 있거든.
As a government official, Oh Yun-nam's immediate concern, though, is that in the past year, productivity has dropped by 30%, exports by 20%, and labour strikes shut 50 factories.
그걸 할 수밖에 없도록 하는 거 아니냐 하는 쪽의 내용을 담아가지고.
졸업할 때까지만요. 압박해 주시면 남은 분 제가요.
It is the day Gimhak Yang has dreaded, yet worked for all his life. He is leaving his village for Seoul and the law school at Korea University. He is the first person from his village ever to be accepted.
Everyone in the village was so proud of me. I visited every house and thanked them for their support.
The bus arriving for Kim is about to transport him from sheltered innocence into the front lines of Korean political debate. In Korea, as in many other parts of Asia, students have an historic role in society. It's almost incumbent on them to be radical. And Gimhak Yang, as he leaves Yalpo village, is about to be initiated.
여러분의 귀중한 인생의 한때를 보내는 대학 생활을 시작하게 되었습니다. 이 대학에서 학문의 연구와 인격 도야에 힘씀으로써 다가오는 21세기의 신천지에서 종횡무진으로 활약할 약진의 도약들을 바로 이 대학에
Kim and his fellow freshmen learn here on day one the traditions of university life and the rituals of protest. On graduation, they can, and probably will, shed their idealism and go to work for the Chaebols. But while at university, they're expected to lead society's calls for democratic change. So today, they sing of the passing of childhood.
Today I really feel like a college student. I belong here. I'm a part of this university. Hello everybody. I'm from Gumho High School, 15th graduating class. Now at Korea University Law School. My name is Gimhak Yang.
Kim is doing the local version of drinking it down, down, down. And whatever it is he's downing doesn't look too appetizing.